Hi there, I'm Kathleen Jasper, and today we're working through the Elementary Education Content Knowledge for Teaching 7813, which is the math portion of that test. And we're also going to be talking about the new Praxis test 5006, specifically the math portion of that test, which is labeled the 5008. Don't worry, I will clear up all these numbers and jargon for you in the video. Let's get started. All right, so you know that Praxis has a bunch of different tests and they all have different numbers and it can be very, very confusing. And so today I want to talk about two tests specifically, the 7811, which is the content knowledge for teaching, and the 5006, which is the brand new elementary education test. Both of these exams are very similar and they are for the elementary education certification in some states. So the states that are using the 7811, which is the content knowledge for teaching, are Idaho, DC, Kansas, Maryland, South Carolina, and South Dakota. And the states that are introducing the new elementary education 5006, which is similar to the 7811, are Indiana, Alaska, and Hawaii. Now, Indiana is fully using the new 5006. Alaska and Hawaii are offering it. They have not used it as their main test yet, but this new Praxis 5006 is floating around out there. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood what it is and how it's being used and all of that. So let's go through the elementary education tests really quickly so you understand how they're structured. Most people in most states are using the 5001. This is the regular old elementary education exam that most states are using to certify their teachers in elementary ed. It is broken up into 4 parts: ELA in reading, math, social studies, and science. And those each have their own number. So ELA is 5002, math is 5003, social studies is 5004, and science is 5005. Now, most of you take this exam, all right? This is the whole exam here, its number, and then it has these subtests right here. And you know, if you've taken this exam, you can pass one of these subtests or more, and you may only have to take the social studies or the math or whatever. So that's how that test works. There's another test that's the elementary education content knowledge for teaching, and that is labeled the 7811 test. And that is broken up into 4 parts. We have English Language Arts, and that's the 7812. And then we have the math, which is the 7813. Then we have, they switched it, it's science is the 7814, and then social studies, which is the 7815. Notice the pattern here. This is the whole shebang, the big test there, and then there are these subtests here. And then we move on to a brand new test, 5006. And this is structured a little bit differently. There are only 2 subtests on here. And what they've done is they took the 5007, and that is the English Language Arts and Reading and Social Studies, and the 5008, which is the math and science. You can see they kind of broke them up by like content area, but also mushed the content areas together that are similar. And so a lot of people are struggling with this section here, this math. Now, again, this is the whole shebang, 5006, and then we have these 2 areas here. Now, the math is particularly challenging in the 5008 and the 7813 because unlike the 5001 math here, where you just do straight up math problems, you like work out fractions, you do, there are some linear equations, word problems, geometry, all of that. In the 7813, content knowledge for teaching, and the 5008, the new test that Indiana's using right now, you have to do the teaching of the math. You have to figure out where the student made the mistake, why the student made the mistake, what's the best approach, and it can be very, very confusing. So we're going to talk about those areas today in this video because I've been getting a lot of emails and a lot of requests for that. So I want you to keep in mind the 7811 is very similar to the 5006. The only real difference is that this one is broken up differently in these two areas, but the ideas and the questions and the test specifications are the same. We're not going to talk about 5001 today. I have a lot of videos on 5001. I have a lot of webinars because most of the country uses that test. So I already have a lot of resources out there and I'll link them up for you. We're going to focus more on these two tests here, 7813 and the 5008, because there are a few of you out there who are desperate for some resources for that. So let's take a look at those two blueprints. All right, so you know that no matter what test you're taking, I'm going to tell you to go straight to the blueprint or the study companion. Now, ETS provides an amazing resource for its test takers. And so you have these very robust study companions with tons of information, practice questions, and guiding questions to help you on the exam. So before you buy a study guide, before you do anything, I want you to go straight to these study companions, and I will link them up in the description. But let's take a look at the study companion for the 7811. You can see that this is the test blueprint, and we're going to focus today on the 7813, the mathematics content knowledge for teaching. And there are 85 questions in this part. You can see again, this is broken up into 4 subtests, 7812, 3, 4, and 5. Similarly, the Praxis Elementary Education Assessment is the new test, 5006. This is broken up, but it has 2 main content categories, 5007, which is reading and language arts, and social sciences or social studies, and the 5008, which is the mathematics and the science. So they basically lumped the STEM subjects together and like the language arts and the humanities together there. So we're going to focus today on the 5008. Now, if you take a look at these two blueprints, you're going to see that they're very similar. As we move into the test specifications, and I always want you to do that, you're going to see how similar they are. So here is the blueprint for the mathematics section of the 5008, and this is the blueprint for the 7813. And you can see it is broken up a little bit differently, but as we move down into the test specifications here, you'll see that there are a lot of similarities. Let's do that for both. So you can see here we have under A, counting operations with whole numbers. This is for the 5008. And here for the 7813, counting and operations with whole numbers. And we have this counts and skips and demonstrates understanding of one-to-one correspondence, subitizes, all of that. Let's go back to this one here, counts and skips. There's a little bit here about cardinality, but we have representations of subtraction, solving real-world problems, identifying properties of operations, and those are going to be in here as well. Representations of here, solving operations with whole numbers. So there's going to be some overlap here as we talk about that. And then you move into fractions, place values, same here. We have place values in decimals, fractions, and then early equations, expressions, measurement, and geometry. And the same goes here, early expressions, equations, measurement, and geometry. All right. Now, the most important part that I love about this new study companion for 5008, let me just scroll down, are these mathematics discussion questions. Now, the good thing about this new study companion is that these mathematics discussion questions are in the front of the study companion, right by the test spec. They used to be at the end. In some of the older tests, they're at the end, and most people don't look at them because this is a giant document, and most people don't scroll past page, 5. So I really suggest that you look at these because they're very, very important. And you can see all of these questions are going to help you on the exam because they do more than just memorize test questions, right? You will not pass this test if you're just trying to memorize test questions. You have to understand the teaching methods, the pedagogy, the practice of teaching mathematics, and that's what's going to help you here. So I highly recommend you look through these discussion questions. You can see that for the 7813 content knowledge for teaching, they're at the end of the document. They're on page 99, but they have really good information here, study questions, a task that you might be asked to do. So this is all really good information, better than any study guide you could get. So definitely take a look at these while you are studying for the exam. Now, further, I want to go into exactly what types of questions you are going to see. And I've evaluated both tests and both study companions, and I can tell you that the math section is very similar in terms of questions. In fact, I've seen the same questions on the 5008 and on the 7813 because they are essentially assessing the same skills. So the practice questions, the specs, and the blueprint really line up. So this video is going to help you for both of those exams. All right, so let's take a look at one of the sample questions from the ETS Study Companion. You can see that I have cited it down there. So anything that you see ETS Study Companion is coming directly from that document. So as we look at these questions, we're always going to want to work backwards. You will probably not see this on the test. This is telling you which area of the test specification and which subtopic this is coming from, which is very helpful in your studies. In our study guides, we do the same thing with our answer explanations. We show you where and what skill, where in the study guide and what skill is being assessed. So this is very helpful, but you know that I'm always going to want to work backwards when I'm looking at big scenario questions like this. And this kind is no different. Now, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to just identify good words, bad words, which is one of my test strategies. But we definitely want to start with the question stem here. We do not want to start up here. We want to start with the task that they are asking us to do. And they're saying, which of the following statements most likely explains the reason behind Dora's error? So we know we have to identify the error first, and then we have to figure out why. All right. So I'm not going to read the answer choices yet. I'm actually going to go up into the question because it's going to give me context for the answer choices. Normally, I would go straight to the answer choices, but in these questions, it's a little bit different. So I always go to the task first, then go to the scenario. Dora made a pile of 5 counters. So let me just explain what counters are. They are little objects that we use for concrete mathematics skills. So when students are young, they have to physically pick up objects and put them next to each other and count them because they can't just do that in their head. So this is a concrete thinking activity. So Dora made a pile of 5 counters. Then Mr. Levi asked her to add counters to her pile of 5 so the pile would have 7 counters. Dora counted out 7 more counters and added them to the pile of 5 counters. So right away, I know what the error is, right? He's asking for her pile to total 7. And she instead takes 7 more counters and throws them on the pile of 5, which essentially makes 12. What she needed to do was take 2 counters, add them to the 5, and make 7. Do you see how this is a lot different than just working through the math problems? So now we have to figure out what is her error and what the reason is behind her error. So let's take a look at A. Dora does not fully understand one-to-one correspondence between numbers and objects. Now, one-to-one correspondence is basically saying like, this is one thing, this equals one thing. These 2 things together equal 2 things. That's correspondence, one-to-one correspondence, okay? That's really not what's going on here. If she held up 1 counter and said, that's 5 counters, that would be a one-to-one correspondence error. In this case, that's not happening. So I can cross off A. B, Dora does not yet have a concept of the quantity 7. Well, that's not true either because she counted out 7 counters and added them to the 5. So she knows what the quantity 7 is. She went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and put them on the pile of 5. So B is out. C, Dora does not yet understand that one quantity can be composed of 2 smaller quantities. All right, that's looking like it's pretty good. I'm going to just put a little square around that. I'm going to discredit D, but let's talk about this really quickly. Dora does not understand that 5 plus 2 can equal 7. She just heard 7 and thought she needed to grab 7 counters and put them over there. So C is looking good to me. Let's look at D. Dora does not yet know her number facts for sums greater than 10. That has nothing to do with it. Number facts are things like 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 5 is 7, memorizing those number facts. We want students to do that, but that's not what's going on here. She's not understanding that 2 plus 5 equals 7, and you could put those together to make 7 counters on her table. So C is going to be the proper answer there, okay? Let's take a look at number 2. Now, again, I'm going to start with the question stem. Which of the following problems has the same mathematical structure as the preceding problem? All right, so I'm going to have to match one of these to this. All right, let's take a look. Rosanna had a total of 9 shirts. She gave 2 to Emily. How many shirts does Rosanna have now? So this is a takeaway problem or a subtraction problem, right? She had 9. She took away 2. How many does she have now? That question mark looks like a 2. Let me clean that up so we're not confused. How many does she have now? Okay, so it's subtraction. Let's take a look at A. Rosanna used 7 paint colors for her project. Emily used 2 different paint colors for her project. How many paint colors did Rosanna and Emily use together? Together means an addition problem, and that is not going to mirror this problem above, so I can cross it off. B, Rosanna has some books. She bought 1 more book. Now she has 8 books. How many books did Rosanna start with? Okay, this is actually an add to problem with the start unknown. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So we're not sure how many books she has. She adds some books. Oh no, she adds 1 book, it says. Now she has 8 books. So this is the part we need. Does that match the top one? No, it does not. So B is out. C, Rosanna has a total of 3 stickers. Emily has 6 more stickers than Rosanna. How many stickers does Emily have? This is actually addition as well. We have 3 plus 6 equals, and we're not sure what the ending is. That's what they're asking us. And then, so we can cross that off. And then D, Rosanna bought 5 cookies for lunch. How many cookies did she have after she ate the cookies? Well, looks like she subtracted 5. How many does she have left? So which one of these mirrors the top one? It's going to be D, right? 5 minus 5 equals question mark. 9 minus 2 equals question mark. Now let me show you where you can get an idea of this type of thinking. This is very Common Core math. So you're going to want to look at the Common Core glossary in the math section of the standards. So in the Common Core State Standards Initiative, under the math section, there is something called the math glossary. And if we go to table 1, it breaks down all of the different operations in math. Now you can see here, this is an add to result unknown. 2 plus 3 equals, we're not sure what the result is. This is the change unknown here. 2 plus a change unknown equals 5. And this is the start unknown, add 2. Something I have plus 3 equals 5. Now, I highly recommend you work through this particular table because it's a lot different from the way we were taught in school. It is the same concepts. Math is math. It's the same. It's just that it's presented a little bit differently. And so I highly recommend you look at this. Now, what we are talking about in this problem here, Rosanna has 9 shirts. She gave 2 to Emily. How many shirts does Rosanna have now? We're looking at a take from problem or a subtraction problem, which is what we would normally say, but it's called a take from problem for the little ones. We're trying to give them that concrete knowledge, right? So this is a take from problem, total unknown, right? Because it's saying how many does she have now? And after the equal sign, we're not sure what that is. So the total is unknown. And that's essentially what this question is asking you. It's asking you to mirror the type of problem that's going on here. And understanding this particular chart in the mathematics glossary of the Common Core will help you. Now, this is just table 1. There's table 2, where it talks about equal groups, arrays, compare, general. These are things you will see on the exam as well. Table 3 has to do with like associative property, commutative property. These are standard math concepts that you're going to see on tests all the way up through high school. There are questions on the commutative property, the multiplicative identity property of 1. It's all laid out here in these tables. It sounds way more complicated than it is. When you actually look at these tables and match them up to their definitions, it makes complete sense. And then we also have inequalities, I believe. Well, this is reflexive and symmetric, but I believe there are inequalities. Yes, there are properties of inequalities here that you will be able to understand for the more advanced problems when you get into those equation problems on the exam. So you're going to want to take a look at the Common Core Mathematics section in order to be better at the 7813 and the 5008 mathematics. All right, let's just do one more for good measure because this one looks pretty complicated. This one comes from the Ets Study Companion, and it shows up in both the 7813 and the 5008. So you're going to see this on both exams. And we have a lot of things going on here. So you can take a look at the question stem. First, locate the question stem. What is my task? What am I being asked to do here? So it says, which of the following changes to Daryl's explanation is best for clarifying the mathematics that underlie his strategy? So we need a better explanation. All right, that underlie the strategy. I have no idea what they're talking about yet. I need to read the question here. I'm going to go back up to here. All right. Ms. Hayes asks her students to calculate the difference between 0.7 minus 0.07 by converting the decimals into base 10 fractions. All right, so that's in the specs. We need to know what base 10 fractions are. And looking through this question is going to help you a little bit too. One student, Daryl, answered the problem as repeated in the following work. All right, so let's take a look at Daryl's work here. We have these starting decimals, and then he turns them into base 10 representations. Because 0.7 is 7 over 10, check. And 0.07 is 7 over 100, check. So we're essentially saying here 7 tenths minus 7 100ths. Very good. Now, those fractions are different. What did he do? Well, looks like he found a common denominator here. And it looks like he did the proper thing at the top for the 7. He basically multiplied both the bottom and the top by 10. And then he subtracted. And he got the correct answer here. And then converted it back to decimals. So everything looks good here. And in my question stem here, it did not ask for me to find an error. It said for me to figure out, what's going on. All right, so let's see what Daryl has to say about his strategy. When Ms. Hayes asked Daryl to explain his strategy, he said, the answer is 63 hundredths. That is correct. I wrote the decimals 7 tenths and 7 hundredths as fractions and subtracted them. Since I wanted the denominators to be the same, common denominator, I added 0 to the first 7 and a 0 to 10. And 70 hundredths minus 7 hundredths is 63 hundredths. All right, so basically what he said here was he had 7 over 10 minus 7 over 100. And so he added a 0 here and added a 0 there. Did that work? It did. It gave you the common denominator. And because it's 100, the zeros worked there, right? But will that work for every single subtraction of fraction problems? No, this one just happened to be that we're working with 100s and 10s, so it works here. But if I had like 1/2 minus 5/6, could I do that same situation there? No, I couldn't. So they're asking which of the following would best clarify his strategy. All right, so let's take a look at A. He should indicate why 0.7 equals 7 tenths and why 0.07 equals 7 100ths. No, we don't need to do that. We just know it's in base 10 fractions. We already know that. B, he should point out that 7 times 10 equals 70, 10 times 10 equals 100. This is how he found the common denominator more specifically. So B is looking good. It explains what you would do to the top of the fraction and what you would do to the bottom of the fraction. So B looks good here. C, he should point out that 70 over 100 minus 7 over 100 equals 70 minus 7 over 100. No, hot mess. We don't do it that way. And D, he should indicate why 0.63 is equal to 63 over 100. D is incorrect for the same reason A is incorrect. Sometimes you'll have similar things like that in the answer choices, and if they're the same, cross them out because you can only have one right answer for this particular problem, right? So what we want him to do is basically explain how he got that common denominator, and B is how he does that. So complicated, yes, but once you understand how to teach mathematics and you work through that Common Core glossary and the standards for your grade levels, it's really going to help you out a lot. All right, so a couple of things I recommend you do. First, you're going to take a look at the study companion because that's going to lay everything out for you, specifically the skills you are going to want to hone in on when thinking about these two exams. The second thing you're going to do is look at the Common Core state standards for the mathematics glossary and work through those tables and really understand what's going on there. Then on top of that, I would recommend looking over the standards for grades 1 through 6 in the Common Core standards. Now, your state might have its own standards, but they are based on the Common Core standards and they're going to be very similar. And then finally, the last thing you're going to want to do is work through the practice problems in the study companion and go through those guiding questions, those more in-depth questions at the end of those sections of the study companion. And that will help you attack these particularly difficult questions on these exams. All right, so I hope that helps you out today. Remember, these are complicated assessments. You're really going to want to look at the pedagogy and practice for mathematics. You're going to want to use every resource you can. Definitely let me know in the comments if you have any other questions about these particular assessments. Practice, practice, practice. And remember, it's more than just doing practice test questions over and over again. You have to understand how to teach mathematics to young students. And the study companion, the standards, and other resources online are going to help you. We are building products for this particular exam. They're not ready yet, but use my advice in this video to guide your studies. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, letting your colleagues know we're here, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel. Please consider subscribing and following me on my social media networks at Kathleen Jasper. Have a great day.